UFC on ESPN 3. We got Francis Ngannou taking on Junior Dos Santos. I want to jump right into the main event and give my prediction here for this fight. As we look at the tail of the tapes, we see that JDS has more experience with a record of 21-5. He's going to be the older fighter by 3 years. They're both 6'4", but Francis Ngannou is going to have the reach advantage. Francis Ngannou has a record of 13-3. He's 32 years old. And he's 6'4". Junior Dos Santos is on a 3-fight win streak. He has more experience. He's beat Derek Lewis, tied to Ivanov. But before that, he's been TKO'd by Stipe and Alistair Overeem. He's lost to Cain Velasquez. He's been through a lot of wars between Stipe and also a lot of wars with Cain Velasquez that put a lot of miles on a fighter. Most of his wins are by TKO. He has 15 TKOs on his record. He's been TKO'd 3 times, so most of his losses are by knockout. Junior Dos Santos has great footwork for a heavyweight. Good solid boxing, high volume striker. He doesn't pack that much power behind his strikes, but if he catches you with the right shot, you could be in trouble. His opponent on the other side of the fence, we got Francis Ngannou, the Predator, who holds 9 TKO, so most of his wins are by TKO. Most of his losses are by decision, never been submitted or TKO. He's beat Cain Velasquez, Curtis Blades, lost to Derek Lewis and Stipe, but holds wins over Overeem and Andre Arlovski. So he's beat a lot of solid, heavyweights, some of the best that the UFC have to offer. He's getting better with time as well. His cardio was questionable, but that was against a high-level wrestler like Stipe. I don't see Junior Dos Santos trying to take this fight to the ground and try to exhaust Francis. It's going to be more of a stand-up fight, and I think that's going to play in the favor of Francis Ngannou. He packs a lot of power. He's explosive. He's a huge heavyweight. He's going to have the reach advantage as well. So my pick here is going to be Francis Ngannou, just for the fact that he's packed a lot of power, and sometimes Junior Dos Santos could be stationary, where he leaves his back against the cage and he puts himself at risk of getting knocked out like he did in the past. And JDS, he's been through a lot in the fight game, too many wars in my opinion. And we got to go with the Predator, Francis Ngannou, picking up the W. As we move on to the co-main event, we have a rematch between Formiga and Joseph Benavidez. I like Joseph Benavidez getting it done here. I just think, Joseph is going to be the better striker. They're both solid at grappling, but I don't really see this fight hitting the ground. I don't think Formiga is going to be able to take down Joseph, and Joseph's striking is going to be better than Jussier here. But Formiga has improved in his striking. He's on a big 4-fight win streak. They're both 34 years old, and Formiga holds a small reach advantage going into this fight. Formiga got TKO'd by Joseph in the past, where they first fought in the first round, but he's on a big 4-fight win streak where he beat Davison Figueiredo, who was a high prospect, and a lot of people count Formiga out to lose that fight. Beat Sergio Pettis as well. Most of his wins are by decision. He's a solid black belt in jiu-jitsu. But yeah, as we see in the past, he did get knocked out by Joseph in the very first round. He's made improvement in his striking, but I don't think he's made enough improvements to beat Joseph here. Joseph as well is on a big 2-fight win streak where he beat solid prospects like Dustin Ortiz and Alex Perez, who are pretty much somewhat the future of that flyweight division if he's going to stay around. Most of his wins are by decision or TKO. Most of his losses are by decision. He lost to Sergio Pettis, but he holds a big win over our current champ, Henry Cejudo. So that just shows, how good Joseph is. He's a high-level flyweight, and I think he's going to be able to pick up the W here. So my pick is Joseph getting it done again. As we move on to this welterweight showdown, we got Damian Maia taking on Anthony Rocco Martin. Very tough fight here to call. Damian Maia is up there in age at 41. He just beat Lyman good, and before that he was on a 3-fight losing streak. Um, he's a solid black belt in jiu-jitsu, so most of his wins are by submission, and he's possibly one of the best jiu-jitsu fighters in all of MMA here. So most of his wins are by submission at 13. Most of his losses are by decisions. He's only been TKO once. He's fought Usman, Kobe, and Willie. He's fought for the middleweight title and also the welterweight title. So he's been doing a lot for the UFC fight game. He's been through a lot. He got title shots and he came up short. So we just don't know where he's at mentally here. I mean, yeah, Damian Maia of the past in his prime, I think, would easily pick up the W. But this isn't the Damian Maia from the past. He's 41 years old, and things change with age. I just think Anthony Rocco Martin is going to be the younger, fresher fighter here. He has a quite solid amount of experience for a guy to be 29. He has a total of 20 fights. Has 9 submission victories as well, so most of his wins are by submission. He's lost by submission 2 times, so he probably worked on a submission defense. I don't know, he has to for this fight here. He's on a big 4-fight win streak. As you see, he beat Jake Matthews, Ryan Flair, and he lost to OAM. Leonardo Santos subbed him before. So, very tough fight here. But I don't see Damian Maia being able to close the distance and get the takedown here. I think Anthony Rocco Martin's striking is just a little bit better. His cardio might be better than Damian Maia as well. Damian Maia has, questionable conditioning at some fights. So I think Anthony Rocco Martin should be able to stuff the takedowns to keep this fight on its feet. And I think Anthony Rocco Martin will have the big favorite to pick up the W here. As we move on to this fight card, we jump into the lightweight division. We got Roosevelt Roberts, my boy Go-Getter, taking on Vince Pichel here. Gotta go with the Go-Getter. Big prospect, young fighter, 8-0, doesn't have that much experience going on against a guy like Vince here, who has a record of 11-2. He's 36 years old, so he's up there in age. For a guy to be that old and don't have that many fights is very questionable to me. So yeah, man, I like Go-Getter getting the job done here. He's 6'1". He's gonna be the taller fighter with a small reach advantage. Roosevelt Roberts on a big 8-fight win streak. We've seen him compete in the Dana White Contender Series. Most of his wins are by submission. He beat Darrell Horcher, Thomas Gifford, so these some tough guys. He's getting better with time, so the more and more we see him, he's getting better and he's improving. Vince, I don't really think he has that much more room to improve in. He's already, 30, up there, 36 years old. Can't teach an old dog new tricks here. So, most of his wins are by TKO at 8. He's lost by submission and been TKO before. Gregor Gillespie beat him before. And, he picked up wins against Damian Brown at UFC Fight Night 110. So he's picked up big wins as well. And he's no stranger to competing in the UFC. He has some solid amount of fights under the UFC banner. But I think Roosevelt Roberts is just going to be too quick, too young, too fast. I gotta go with the youth. Roosevelt picking up the job, getting the W. Drew Dober versus Polo Reyes at lightweight. I like Drew Dober to pick up the W here. Drew Dober has way more experience going into this fight with a total of 29 fights. Polo Reyes has a record of 8-5. He's gonna be the older fighter by 4 years. Polo Reyes is the taller fighter and has a small reach advantage, being 5'11" compared to Dober's 5'8". But Dober, he looked good in his last fight, even though he lost. He was really having more success on the feet against Beneil Dariush. He's pretty much on his way to a victory, a TKO victory, until the fight hit the mat. Beneil was able to pull a rabbit at the hat and get a submission victory. Most of Dober wins is tied at 7 apiece. He has 7 TKOs and 7 decision wins. Most of his losses are by decision or submission. He's been subbed 3 times, lost 5 decisions, and holds big wins over tough guys like Frey Camacho and John Tuck, and also fighter that competed in the Ultimate Fighter before, Joshua Berkman. He's lost to OAM though, and he lost to Escudero, so he's lost to some tough guys, but he beat Scott Holtzman, Haas, and Jason Gonzalez, so he has beat solid fighters. I think he beat better fighters than Polo Reyes has. Polo Reyes is 8-5. He's coming off of a loss by TKO by Damir Hazovic. And he picked up wins over Matt Frivola. Lost to James Vick. Polo Reyes, he's no stranger to competing in the UFC. We've seen him fight a few times here, so he's comfortable here fighting in the UFC. But I just think Drew Dober is just, going to be overall the better fighter, stand up. And if, he has trouble on the feet with Polo Reyes, I think he's going to have the wrestling advantage as well. So my pick here is easily Drew Dober getting the job done. As we move on to this light heavyweight showdown, we got Paul Craig versus Alonzo Menifield. Solid fight. Pretty much a veteran of the game taking on, a high prospect, up and comer. Alonzo Menifield's 8-0. So Paul Craig has a little bit more experience with a record of 11-3. He's 31 years old. So they're both in the same age. Paul Craig's the taller fighter and is going to have, 6'4" to Menifield 6'1". Menifield's on a big 8-5 win streak. He's competed in Bellator, also in the Dana White Contender Series. He's coming off a huge TKO win versus a man who's also competing on this card, Vinicius. Most of his wins are by TKO, so he packs a lot of power in his strikes. Has a nasty overhand right, and it just takes one shot for him to land, really, to put a guy out cold. He's fought in Bellator. He's fought in the Dana White Contender Series. So he's a prospect we got to watch out for. Paul Craig doesn't have the best striking. He's more known as a jiu-jitsu fighter. He has 10 submission victories. He's pretty much a guy, who really gets beat up on the striking until the guy exhausts himself and, he finally laces up a submission and gets the fighter out of there. He beat Kennedy, who was a big, Nigerian fighter that a lot of people hyped up. He picked up a submission win there. But he lost to Khalil Roundtree and Tyson Pedro. His striking isn't the best. He has improved a little bit, but not enough to stop him from getting TKO'd here. I think Alonzo Menifield is going to be able to put him in a lot of trouble, get him rocked, and possibly get him out of the fight in the first round. I like Alonzo Menifield just for the fact that he goes for the kill and he packs a lot of power. And Paul Craig doesn't have the best chin, but he's durable, solid conditioning, and if he's able to go through that beating and survive, he could possibly pick up a submission. But we got Alonzo Menifield here. We got Ricardo Ramos taking on Journey Newson. I like Ricardo picking up the W here. We know Journey is making his debut in the UFC, so we don't know how he's going to be able to perform. Making it into the big show for the very first time. He could have the UFC jitters. We just don't know. He's on a big win streak. He's 9-1. So Ricardo has a little bit more experience going into this fight. He's the younger fighter, going to have the height and reach advantage going into this fight. Ricardo, he's 5'9", and Journey's only 5'5", so he's gonna have the reach advantage. He's gonna be able to pick his shots, and most of his wins are by a submission victory. He's coming off of a loss here to Saeed at UFC 144. Most of his losses are by TKO. Picked up wins at UFC 227 as well. So he beat Ayman Sahabi, so he's no stranger to competing here in the UFC. So I'll say he's more comfortable here, especially taking on a fight with a guy like Journey who's making his debut. Most of Journey wins are tied at 3 apiece according to Sherdog here. He's 3 submissions and 3 decision wins. He's fought here at some lower class place, man. I don't even know. But he picked up the wins here at CES Cage Sport. And yeah, we don't know too much about him. So yeah, my pick's got to be the guy who's fought in the UFC more, who has more experience at the UFC and feels more comfortable. So we got to go Ricardo picking up the W here. As we move on to this light heavyweight showdown, Eric Anders versus Vinicius. I like Eric Anders picking up the W, even though he's riding the 3-fight, losing streak. He's 32 years old, so he'd be the older fighter by 2 years. Vinicius is going to be the taller fighter with a small reach advantage. He's coming off of a loss to Alonzo Menifield, so, his striking is pretty much his downfall in MMA and something that he needs to make improvements in if he wants to stick around in the fight game a little bit longer. Most of his wins are by submission victory. He holds 8 submission wins. So he's pretty much a jiu-jitsu fighter here. And if he hasn't made any improvements, I think Eric Anders is going to be able to get the job done here. Your boy, 7 TKOs on his record. He really has struggled with strikers like Khalil Roundtree and Thiago Santos and Machida. He had a lot of hype around him at one point. But I just think your boy is going to be the better fighter overall here. He's going to be able to stuff the takedowns. I think his striking's a little bit better than Vinicius here. So my pick is going to be your boy, Eric Anders, getting it done. As we move on to this featherweight showdown, we got Jordan Griffin taking on Vince Murdoch here. Jordan Griffin's going to be my pick. He has more experience here. He's more comfortable at fighting in the UFC compared to a guy making his debut. I don't really like to make, picks on guys making their debut here. Jordan Griffin is 5'10", and he's gonna have the reach advantage to be the taller fighter. Has more experience. Vince Murdoch, like I said, is making his debut. Don't know how he's gonna be able to compete under the big lights. His first time, a lot of pressure on him. But the Native Psycho has 8 submission victories on his record. He's coming off of a loss, but he beat, Maurice Mitchell in the Dana White Tuesday Contender Series. But lost to Danny Ige. So, he lost to a solid dude. I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Losing to a tough guy like Danny Ige is pretty much on his way up the rankings right now. And, yeah, man, Murdoch here, we just don't know how he's going to be able to do, Most of his wins are by TKO. He's been TKO 3 times, so most of his losses are by TKO. Yeah, man, just don't know how he's going to be able to perform here at the UFC for the very first time against a guy who's comfortable and competing in front of Dana White in the UFC. I just got to go with the fighter with more experience and the guy who's competed in the UFC before. So my pick's Jordan Griffin. As we move on to this lightweight showdown, we got Jared Gordon taking on Dan Moret here. I like Jared Gordon to pick up the W. These men are both on 2-fight losing streaks. We know Gordon's going to be the younger fighter by 2 years. Dan's going to be the taller fighter with a nice reach advantage. Dan, most of his wins are by submission victory, so it's pretty much a solid striker versus grappling match here. Dan, we didn't get too much good luck going in here. He had to fight tough guys on short notice like Gilbert Burns, where he got TKO'd, and he fought Alex White. But most of his wins are by submission victories. He's been TKO'd twice. Most of his losses are by decision at 3. So he has a total of 18 fights here. Jared Gordon on the other side, has a total of 17 fights. Most of his wins are by decision or TKO 6 at a piece. He's lost to Diego Ferreira. Big wins over Hakran Diaz. And, like I said, pretty much a striker versus grappler match. If he's able to stuff the takedowns, you see Jared Gordon pretty much just outstriking Dan. But that's going to be a tough task. Dan's a solid, ground fighter. If he gets it down on the ground, he could possibly look for a submission and grind out, a solid win. So my pick is going to be Jared Gordon getting the job done. As we move on to this light heavyweight fight, we got Dalcha taking on Daquan Townsend. I like Dalcha to pick up the W here, the South African fighter. We know that he's kind of hyped up going into this fight. He's from EFC, so he's fought in a solid promotion out in South Africa. And, he picked up the wins at EFC 71. He holds 4 TKO wins and 4 decision wins, so they're tied at a piece at decision or TKO. He's been submitted once. We know that his opponent, Daquan Townsend, they're both making their debut here. He has more experience. He's going to be the taller fighter and should hold the reach advantage going into this fight. He has more experience, so that could play a factor in him picking up a W here. But I just think that, the UFC is putting this Daquan Townsend guy here up to pretty much lose and, try to help build up this fighter who has a lot of hype around him. I got to go with the South African getting the job done. So Dalcha is going to be my pick here. Then we have a women's strawweight fight. We got Emily versus Amanda here. I like Emily picking up the W here. She has her total of 6 fights, so she doesn't have that much experience. Amanda holds 1 more fight on her record. Emily's going to be the bigger fighter. She trains at Extreme Couture. She's coming off of a big submission victory over at Alexandra Albu, who's, pretty much a prospect from Russia that the UFC was kind of pushing. And Emily took her down, subbed her, made it look easy. So I think her grappling is going to play a big role in her victory here. But we see that, Amanda's going to make her debut. So it's another thing you got to wonder about how she's going to do with this pressure fighting in front of all these fans for the very first time in the UFC. Most of her wins are by TKO. But yeah, man, I like Emily. Pick up the W here. I think her wrestling is going to play a big, strong factor in her being victorious. So that'll be my pick. We jump into the last fight that I'm going to break down with the very first fight on the card. Maurice Green from The Ultimate Fighter taking on Junior the Diaper Man Albini. Junior Albini is on a 3-fight losing streak. You got to go with Maurice Green here. Maurice Green is going to be, 6'7", so he holds the height and the reach advantage. He's the big heavyweight. Albini, he's lost to guys on their debut in the UFC. Albini, he has more experience when it comes to fight, but he lost to Andre Arlovski, Olenek. He beat Timothy Johnson. He's been, pretty busy in the UFC, but, the only win that he does have on his record in the UFC is against Timothy Johnson. The rest, been losses on his record, bro. So, my pick got to be the Ultimate Fighter winner, Maurice Green. Maurice Green, most of his wins on his record are by submission victory. He beat Jeff Hughes, a man who beat him before in the past. So he redeemed the loss, and, he picked up wins at the Ultimate Fighter 28. I got to go just with Maurice Green being the better striker. I don't think Albini's going to be able to get it down to the ground, and if he does, he really doesn't know what to do when he gets a fighter down on the ground. His submission game isn't the best. So yeah, Maurice Green is going to be my pick. And those are going to be pretty much my picks here for UFC on ESPN 3. Francis Ngannou versus Dos Santos. Thank you guys for watching.